Good evening and welcome to this week in review. Tonight's stories include work has started on the War Memorial, renovations on the Ground Search and Rescue building have been completed, our MHA Kelvin Parsons stopped by on Friday, these stories plus community events, the BBS Playbill, Off the Rack and more coming up after this.
Just the thought of losing you brings out my love so true. Hurting you is the last thing I would ever do. I'm taking care of you.
Do a good turn for the earth. A community service thought from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
The town has started work on the War Memorial. On Wednesday of this week, town workers finished the cement block that will be the foundation for the War Memorial. As you can see, the memorial will stand alongside the Fisherman's Monument. Mayor Ann reported in his last council report that the monument is scheduled to be completed by Remembrance Day. We will keep you updated on the progress of the War Memorial. Renovations to the Ground Search and Rescue building have been completed. We visited on Wednesday to have a look. The outside of the extension has been completed with vinyl siding and 2 windows. Inside, the walls and ceilings have been finished with plywood and have been painted white. The floor is cement and they have installed a ladder leading to the attic which will serve as a storage space. Double doors have been installed to move equipment easier and they have installed a smaller door into the larger one for convenience. Inside the main building, the storage closet has been completed with lockers for survival suits, life jacket. There is a storage area for their maps as well as the radios. When we visited, the workers were busy in the kitchen area. This area has already had new wall paneling put on and is receiving new cupboards. The Ground Search and Rescue is in need of a small kitchen stove. If anyone has one and is willing to donate it to this very important group, please call Chis Dumford. They would really appreciate it. With this new extension, the Ground Search and Rescue will be able to carry out any rescue missions more efficiently. On Friday, we spoke to Mrs. Elsie Rose, new commissioner with the Guiding Movement in Burgeo. Today in our studio, we have with us Mrs. Elsie Rose, commissioner with the Girl Guide Movement here in Burgeo. First of all, Elsie, welcome to our studio. And congratulations on your appointment.
Oh, thank you.
Now, we understand that the registration for the Guiding Movement will be held on Monday, September 11th at 6:30 p.m. in the parish hall. How many girls are you expecting to register this year?
Well, last year we had approximately 50, so considering that there's a few gone, well, figuring between 45 and 50.
Okay. If there are any girls in town who hasn't been a part of the movement before, how would they go about joining up?
Well, they can come along on Monday, or they can call one of the guiders belonging to whatever group their age fits into, and they can take care of it.
Okay. How much does it cost to join the Guiding Movement?
Now, the fee is $25. But now last year when the fee went up, we thought that $25 was too much for the girls to be paying, especially with the way things are in town. So what we did was charge $15, the same as we had done for 2 or 3 previous years. And the Guide Movement from our fundraisers and that we paid the other $10.
Okay. Now, what happens to all the funds that's collected for your registration?
Out of town. We don't keep
So
any of
none
it.
of
It
it
goes
stays
to
here?
provincial, and I don't know where else it goes to, but I know it goes to provincial.
Okay, so that goes to St. John's, and
Yeah.
they dues, whatever.
Mhm.
So none of it is
No.
benefiting our girls. So what is the registration fee for?
Okay, the registration fees, like I said, none of them stay in town.
Yeah.
They're sent to St. John's, and then they go into the insurance for the girls. When the girls come to a meeting, when they go on hikes and outings, or when we go to camp, all members of the Guiding Movement are insured. So that's why it's very important that we have the fees. And, you know, for the parents to pay their fees as soon as possible.
Okay.
And because we have to send it in, there's a deadline for sending in the fees. I believe they have to be in sometime in November.
Okay. Now, we understand that the leaders are planning a camping trip in June of next year for the Guiding Movement. Now, can you tell us a little bit about that event?
Well, we've been all going to camp individually, but now last year was mentioned that we would all go to Sparks, Brownies, Girl Guides, and Pathfinders would all go to the guiding camp at Pinchcut Lake. Now, they have a beautiful spot in there. They have two sites, one for Brownies and Sparks, and the other one for Girl Guides and Pathfinders. So hopefully, if we can get a booking on a date that would be good for all of us, we're hoping that we would go. The only thing is, with something like that, it's going to cost a bit.
Okay, yeah. So where do you plan to get your funds for that?
Well, right now, we've last 3 or 4 years we've been doing a Christmas tree,
Yeah.
so we make a fair amount from that. Last 2 years now we've done the Valentine balloons, which has gone over really well. We sell cookies in the fall and again in the spring. Now, we don't get a lot from it, but you know, we get our share.
Yeah.
And the guiders have been delivering catalogs for Sears. Now, for each catalog we live. Look, can we try that one again?
Yeah. You just have a little break and then talk about your catalog.
Okay. We deliver catalogs for Sears. Every time we deliver a catalog, we are paid so much for doing it. Now, up to now, the guiders have been doing it. And we're hoping the year that a few of the girls have been doing it in some areas. We're hoping now that more of the girls would get involved, because a lot of the guiders are working full time. Well, I mean, you know yourself. And they find it hard to get out at times, especially if it's raining or something. And they like to get the whole community done at one time. And sometimes when people are working, they can't get them done. It could be 3 or 4 days later. And one area of town is done, the other one is not done. So we're hoping now that some of the girls would volunteer to help out. Probably only 12 to 20 catalogs at a time. And we'd give them a list of names and people around them. Not that they got to go from one end of town, somebody down here having to go up and messers. It would be whoever's in the area, the houses around you, so that you can just drop them off when you know that the people are home.
Okay. Now, I understand that the guiders have been doing it, and the catalogs that you've been delivering has increased. Are going to be delivering more.
Yeah, at one time I think we were only doing probably the bigger ones, the winter, the summer, and the Christmas one.
Yeah.
But now we've done 2 in the past month, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe there's another one again in the middle of September.
Okay.
So we're doing a bit more, so that adds up to our money that we're getting, which is good, because then we have extra money for camp or for anything that we need.
Okay, now, I also understand that you are really trying to get the girls involved in delivering catalogs where the movement is paying $10 of their registration fee.
Yes, because
So in essence, they would be...
they're helping to pay for their fee.
Yes.
Because we don't have, unless only the fundraising, that's the only money we got. They pay a collection or dues in the week, but I mean, that's 50 cents, which doesn't add up to a lot when you don't have a lot of girls.
Yeah.
So where we have to pay the $10 for each girl, we're hoping now that the girls will help, and that'll be their contribution towards this $10.
Okay. And the catalogs, once you get your fees paid off, the rest of it will go into a kitty or an account, whatever, to go towards the trip.
Right.
Okay.
Because if we go into Pinchcut, well, we have to get a bus, which is going to cost approximately, well, we're hoping not more than $1,000 in and out.
Yeah.
But then we have to pay for the camp, and then there's groceries, and then there's other things. Now, we charge a camp fee, but we try to keep that to $20.
Yeah.
And if anybody has more than one girl, well, we try to, you know, make some arrangements so that they could pay a little bit less or something.
So what happens now if, say, for example, a family has, I'll say, 2 girls into the movement, and right at the registration night, they can't afford to pay their fees? What can they do, or what will the guiding movement do for them?
Okay, now, well, we'd like to have the fee that night, but if a person cannot pay it that night, they can pay a couple of dollars and just pay it so much a week.
Okay.
Just let us know what you're going to do.
Okay.
And then, you know, we'll make sure that the fees are paid, and then you're just paying us back afterwards.
Okay. And I understand also that the guiding movement has been purchasing uniforms for girls who can't afford to buy uniforms. They just borrow those, and you kind of like trade off.
Okay, now we haven't been buying uniforms.
Okay.
What we did was ask for people who had uniforms that their girls have outgrown,
Yeah.
if they wouldn't mind giving them to us. Now, I don't know if anything was paid for any of them, but I know, like, in Sparks, we have a couple of T-shirts and stuff that people just gave us.
Yeah.
And I think the Girl Guides and the Brownies, some parents did that. The girls had outgrown the uniforms, and they didn't have other girls that needed them. So they've given them to, and we will give them to girls that need them. The only thing is they have to bring them back when they're finished with them.
Finished with them.
Yeah.
Oh.
And on that too, if anybody out there has any uniforms now that they're not using, they're hung up in the closet, we would greatly appreciate having them because the price of the uniforms is high.
Yeah.
So we would like to have a few that, you know, we can let girls use.
Right on, okay. Now, is there anything else you'd like to add? Did we forget anything?
The only thing is, on our registration on Monday night, we would like to have one parent come along with the girls because we want to have a short meeting beforehand. And if there are any people out there who has girls, Sparks are 5 to 6 year olds, Brownies are 7 to 8 year olds, Girl Guides are 9 to 12 year olds, and Pathfinders are 13 to 16. So if there's anybody out there who has girls in those age groups that would like to be part of the movement, come along. If they got a problem with the uniform or the fees, let us know. We can make some arrangements. I mean, there's nothing to stop you from going if you want to go.
We want the girls.
We want the girls.
We want
And
the girls.
if you can't pay the fee, like we said before, if you can't pay the fees right away, or if you can't get a uniform, we'll do what we can to make sure that your fees are paid and that we can get uniforms.
Okay, well, thanks very much for speaking with us today.
Okay, thank you.
Stay tuned for more of This Week in Review coming up after this.
Little things you do that you think are small and few are the things that mean the most to me. So just keep giving whatever you're giving, 'cause even when you're giving just a little,
If you're doing just a little, you're helping a lot.
it helps a lot.
From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
It helps a lot.
On Friday of this week, our MHA, Calvin Parsons, stopped by our studio. We spoke on a variety of topics. We welcome to our studio today our MHA and Minister of Justice, the Honourable Calvin Parsons. Welcome, Mr. Parsons.
Good to be here.
Good. Right off the bat, any new developments with the fish plant?
Sad to say, there aren't any new developments. There are ongoing meetings, letters being written, and I think Mayor Han and the councilors and myself are becoming quite frustrated, actually, that we seem to be beating our heads against the wall with every different level of government and fisheries officers and DFOs and meetings with Mr. Dhaliwal and everything else, and we still keep coming up with the same end result. We need a resource. And it seems like there's always 15 excuses why we can't get a resource. We can't change our management plan. But it's quite frustrating because you see these things happening around the province where accommodations are being made for other areas, and you wonder why, if you can make accommodations everywhere else, why can't you in a place that has a historical attachment to a fishery, that has a plant, that has an operator, that has a trained workforce, why can't we have a resource? And quite frankly, I don't think there's any logical reason why we should not have one. And unfortunately, we have an individual named Mr. Dhaliwal who makes that decision. And he's not prepared to make it at this time. When we last spoke to him, he's saying now he wants to wait until the final details are in place for the 2001 management plan. My concern is we have no indication that he's going to include us in that plan. And I guess I'm as frustrated as the people of Burgeo that we've been going down this road for a long time. I'm almost to the point where if you're not going to give us anything, tell us you're not going to give us anything. At least then we don't take our energies and have them misdirected. We're going down a dead-end road when we can take our energies and apply them somewhere else. So yes, it's ongoing. Yes, the dialogue is ongoing, but it's been very frustrating. And the latest is wait until the 2001 management plan comes out. And my fear is if we don't have anything more positive than that, that's not progress. And if it's not progress, don't leave us in limbo. I just as soon know, are we going to have it or not have it?
So we're still talking about a resource of crab.
Yes, well, both lots of resource. In fact, there's been two proposals. Barry's through Seafreeze put a proposal for redfish to DFO officials back a couple of months ago. I spoke to Bill Matthews as early as this morning. He tells me that he talked to the DFO people in Ottawa yesterday. That redfish proposal by Seafreeze is still being analyzed, and as soon as he gets some results from that, he will let us know. I'm sort of on the outside looking in here in a lot of cases because these things funnel through the federal process and go up to the Ottawa through DFO, which is a federal responsibility. But that's where he tells me it is. So there is a redfish possibility that's being looked at. And again, we've had possibilities upon possibilities, and I don't believe in stonewalling the people. Analyze it, make up your decision, but don't procrastinate and keep us blowing in the wind anymore. Secondly, when we talk about the management plan for 2001, that's where they're talking crap. And that's, again, if you're going to do it, and don't keep the people here in limbo about it. And we won't know that answer until February or March is usually when the federal management plan comes out.
Marion was there a while ago, and he gave us a report on the crabs on the offshore. And are you still getting the reports that they seem to be as good as they were last year and they have to get grease?
The indications we have concerning the offshore outside 200-mile crab, which we were processing here in Burgeo 12 months ago, is that it is phenomenal catches caught in short periods of time with very good quality crab. There's no indication whatsoever that the quantity is not there, that the quality is not there, and that we should not have a quota in the vicinity of 2,500 to 3,000 ton, which we would need to operate this plant. No indication whatsoever. But trying to get that idea across to the scientist, to the federal bureaucrats in DFO, to the point where Mr. Dhaliwal is going to be advised to do that, that's where the stumbling block lies. And it seems no matter how much you use diplomacy, common sense, or logic, it's just not getting through to these people.
Okay. Mr. Ann also told us that he did name the individual, I can't remember what his name is, in the DFO, who told him that that was their management plan for this year, the quota they had, and they weren't going to change it for anybody or anything. So that was kind of like a slap in the face, if you will.
Yes. The hope that we had is that you have a plan, and they've been pretty stringent over the years. If they get a plan, they don't like to say we have a 2000 management plan and they change it 5 times throughout the year. Otherwise, they say, why did we call it a plan? We may as well operate on a reaction basis every time some issue comes up. So there's justifications for why you have a plan to start with. But there's also logical reasons why, if it's merited, if it's justified, why you can amend the plan. And in this particular case, we took crab out of the offshore outside of 200 miles last year. The catch rates this year up to the end of August were phenomenal. There's no reason why you couldn't make a simple amendment to the tune of 2,500 to 3,000 ton and allow Burgeo to do what it did last year. No reason whatsoever.
So it is back again to a political game.
Yes, and it's gone beyond political. I mean, the political game has been played. Your council has been playing the political game. Mayor Han has played the political game. I've played the political game through my government, through the Premier, and Bill Matthews is playing the political game, and we reached the political stalemate named Dhaliwal, and we don't get past that wall because he is receiving advice from bureaucrats. So the political game is being played. Unfortunately, bureaucratic decisions are being made to interfere and stifle this process.
I can see where you're frustrated.
Very frustrating, because I believe the plant in Burgeo is the priority. And I don't say this lightly, that it's only the priority for me for Burgeo. The #1 priority in Burgeo-Lapoil district, and I make no qualms about this, in the whole of my district, is the reactivation of that plant in Burgeo. We should leave no stone unturned in getting it done, if it's going to be done. But we got to be realistic. I don't plan to spend the next 12 months or the next 2 years fiddling around with this. You're either going to do it or we're not going to do it. But there comes a time when people got to get off the potty, as I say, and move on. If we're going to have it, fine. But if not, don't leave us in limbo.
Tell us.
Tell us. We have lives to get on with. If the people of Burgeo decide we're going to have a life here in this community without a plant, we know then we look for other alternatives here. But don't keep us forever in that wishful state that we may have employment from a fishery if you never intend to help us have that. That's my position.
Yeah. Probably a fair position to take. Now, you're very much aware of the economic condition of Burgeo, obviously, and many of our residents have to leave town to find work. Now, will there be any job creation money for our community this year?
Again, the disgusting downside of not having a working community, job creation. I mean, Band-Aid solutions. We find ourselves again Last year we were fortunate with a lot of people getting employment in the exploratory where they had the crab here production. We had people who looked after themselves, and that's the way the system is meant to work. Yes, there will be job creation money again this year. I have difficulty even talking about it because the theory of why you pay job creation money is not right to me. We should have a thriving community here and not be dealing with it. But yes, we do have to face the reality. There's people here who's going to need bread on their table. You can go to PEI and work in fishery facilities. You can go to Nova Scotia and pick apples. And as much as we despise job creation monies, people in this community are going to need it to ensure that they get their unemployment insurance or employment insurance so that they can have income and some source of income to put bread on the table. Yes, it will be there. Normally what happens is you see it activated around mid-October towards the latter part of October. The reason being, whether it's logical again or not, is allow people the opportunity to go out and work themselves so that by the time October comes, or the middle of October, if you're going to have qualified on your own merits, you did it. If you tried and didn't succeed for some reason because the work season you were in wasn't long enough, at least we can step in then and give you that extra few weeks that you need to tide you over to get it, to help you qualify.
Okay, now we are talking about job creation with EI stamp.
EI eligibility, yes.
That's right.
Yeah, one of the projects, for example, that would form part of this, it comes in different forms. Sometimes councils and development associations can create projects to do things that might be trail cuttings or whatever. One, for example, is brush cutting. We desperately need brush cutting on the upper end of the Burgeo Road towards the TCH. I mean, just driving down, anybody who drives down, it's so close to the road now that it's a safety factor. So we've already put in a proposal to do not only a job creation project, which is helpful to the people who need it, but it's also beneficial in that case from a safety point of view. So that's one of the projects that definitely is going to get a green light when it comes to my participation and endorsement is that work one. You mentioned the EI thing, and I should comment that a lot of people have difficulties with the nature of the program, i.e. are they EI eligible or not EI eligible? The federal government controls the EI process. The federal government puts in the funds for the EI programs. The federal government decides whether, when their money is being spent, it is or is not going to be EI eligible. The federal government generally opts to give what they call booster programs as opposed to job. They don't, for example, use EI money to create projects that make you EI eligible. They see that as a contradiction. We're using the very money that we put into the EI pot to put somebody to work to make them EI eligible. Instead, they use that money to boost the level of income that somebody has. The provincial job creation money that we put in as a province doesn't work that way. It's provincial money coming from a provincial source for provincially created projects, and therefore they are EI eligible.
Because like I was mentioning to you earlier, that there's been residents in our town who's having a lot of problems with the EI booster projects. When the project is over, no EI, no stamp.
That's right.
But it's a federal.
The EI regulations require some serious amendments. We have an MHA who represents the Carbonaire Arbor Grace area. His name is George Sweeney. He has had it as a personal mandate for the last 2 years, along with Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Walter Knoll, to make changes to the EI regulations to take into consideration the fact that we have a rural economy as opposed to an urban economy for the most part in Newfoundland, and we have people who are involved in seasonal jobs. The regulations as they currently stand don't take proper consideration of those factors. We've been pushing for a year now to get a meeting with Jane Stewart. Now, I realize she had her own problems up in Ottawa with some expenditures that she made through her department, but that doesn't forego her responsibility to deal with these reform issues that are needed. And hopefully we'll be successful in getting some of these changes made.
Okay. Now, the rec complex, can you give us an update on that?
Yes,
project?
yes. There is a committee that consists, of course, of representatives of the BDDB. Dr. Barter is representing from council on that committee, and Glenn Peterson of the Recreation Committee is a 3-person committee. The proposal, the problem that the province had was they said, we cannot commit to do a full recreational project if we don't have the money to give to you at this time. And they weren't prepared to commit to that. So I arranged a meeting between that committee and St. John's recently with Mr. Wayne Churchill, who is the Chief Engineer Development Officer for the province, to find a way that if you're not prepared to commit to the whole project at this time, how can we put it together in such a manner that we can do the project in stages, but in the end result still end up with what we wanted? So I guess it's a matter of semantics, and sometimes bureaucrats work quite well depending on how you word something, but that was quite frankly the purpose of the meeting, was if you're not satisfied with the wording we had to do this, how do you want us to word it so that we can still do it? And sometimes people like to think that as long as you do it their way, and quite frankly, I don't care how Mr. Churchill or Municipal Affairs wants it worded, as long as we accomplish what we set out to do, which is to get the complex. In fact, I was due to have meetings with him this week, but he is off. He's sick at the present time, so I had hoped to have a follow-up with him. And that, of course, would lead to a meeting with Joan Marie Aylward, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, for whom he works. And she's had a death in her family recently, so she's been off for some time. But yes, the committee is active. Yes, we've had the meetings with the departmental officials. Yes, it looks very positive in terms of getting the funding that we need at this time to get stage 1 done, which is the engineering design part, because we had to know, we've had all kinds of talk about what are we going to build, where are we going to build it, are we going to be joined to a school, or are we going to be standing free on our own, and all those types of questions. Is it going to be a bowling alley, a rink, or is it going to be a combination of everything, or a swimming pool? The time has come to design something that we know where we're going to be going to from here. Like, the time for talk is over and the committee has reached that stage. They know what they want. They know approximately what it's going to cost. Of course, it would all have to be costed out through bid and tender process and so on. But yes, it's alive and well and ongoing, I'm pleased to say.
Good. Now, the BBS, along with other partners, are trying to develop an IT incentive. Now, what's happening with that project?
Don't want to steal anyone's thunder, and I won't. All I'll say at this time is the project is moved to all the stages that it could be moved through. It's reached a finale stage, and I think everyone will be pleased with the outcome, but I'm not prepared at this time. In fact, I'm prohibited at this time from saying anything or spilling the beans or whatever, but I can say yes, that initiative has been successfully driven, and I think successfully accomplished, and we'll see exactly what the details are in the very, very short term.
Wow, that's good news.
And I'll leave it to someone else to fill in any more details on that.
Okay, so who would that someone be?
Probably Dr. Barter, who's been the spearhead on this committee, and there may be some minor changes as to what went in the grinder and what finally came out, but I think the end result she'll be quite pleased with, and the public will be pleased with.
Now, our school. All of our students now are into one building, and the renovations have been completed, and they're a little cramped for space, but oh well. There's on the horizon, there's a new building that's supposed to emerge. So when can we see construction of the new school?
I met today, actually. That's where I just spent the past 2 hours. I sat in. Mr. Butt, Andy Butt, the Director of Education, was down from Stephenville along with some of his officials. They had a teacher day from teachers from A.J. Matthews as well as from the high school. Got together for the whole day. The high school students had school this week. The elementary school and primary kids are due to start on Monday. So the purpose of today was to find out, how did it work this week so far? Is everybody settled away in terms of accommodations and desk and room, and how are we going to work the classroom schedules? And are we all ready for Monday? There's teacher concerns, there's parental concerns, there's student concerns, there are safety issues, parking concerns, curriculum, are we going to have our gymnasium? Do we need 2 school councils working now, or do we need 1? There's a whole mess of issues that were there. I'm pleased to say that from what I observed today is that we have very positive thinking teachers here and administrators who have taken what could have been a very tough task, because this was only decided in June the 22nd of this year. approximately 2 months ago to merge them this quickly, and they've got, physically everything is in place. There's a few little odds and ends to be ironed out in terms of the parking requirements and the playground facilities for the short term, but these people got their heads on right. These people are on track. These kids know where they're going to be going to, and I sense, if anything, a positive attitude there, because let's realize it. We know as a fact that when the new place opens, these students are all going to be together then. The teachers are all going to be together then. The only thing is they've started doing it that much quickly. So when the school was finally built and opened, it's going to be a simple process then of moving physical structures into a new building and taking what you've already groomed over this 2-year period together with you. And Mr. Butt commented today that, I mean, he is amazed at how everybody pulled on the rope in the same time, in the same direction with this project, and it was amazing what they got done over here.
So,
The plan in terms of the construction, he indicated today that there were some minor issues of underground tanks, which the Environment Department, of course, had to come in and look at to make sure that we excavate and reclaim anything that's necessary here. He's looking at possibly a February startup. Now, that's not to mean nothing happening between now and February. Between now and February, you have the finalization of all the drawings, the tender processes, the certain landscaping that's going to be done, certain dismantling in the building. There was some asbestos, I believe, around the furnace facilities that had to be taken out. So there's lots of activity leading up to getting ready to build, because you had to dismantle and get all these things out of there before we actually start. But come spring of 2001, we're in for a very, very busy time over on that site, because we're going to be full tilt with building.
okay, so it's not as easy process as somebody sitting at home saying, well, they haven't took the school down yet.
No.
There's stages and
Yes,
procedures
there's
and environmental issues and things like that that got to be looked at. And
That's right. We want to do it. We want to do it right. I mean, we're going to have a new school. We don't want to build it and find out when you open the doors that we have an environmental problem from some asbestos or an underground tank. I mean, we know these issues had to be resolved, and quite rightly, Mr. Butt is insisting that they be resolved. So, between the Department of Education and the district school board and the people in this area and the Department of Environment, it's going to take those 4 or 5 months to get it ready. It has to go to tender, and then as soon as the construction season starts in 2001, full steam ahead. Mr. Butt anticipates, all things being equal, opening the building in around February of 2002. So if you're looking at a, you're basically a 1-year construction phase from February to February.
very good. Now, I don't know if this falls in with your realm of priority or anything, but one of my residents spoke to me and talking about eating oil, and she said hers has gone up $13 on 50 gallons since the last time she purchased it. And rumors around town is that that's not going to stop. It's going to steadily increase throughout the winter season. Is there anything that the government can do to put control on how often that the eating oil is increased?
You can have some form of regulation. The downside to it is we have very little control as to the amount of oil that we do have in our system. For example, the price now sits at higher than it ever did in history. I believe the last price I heard yesterday on NTV News was that a barrel of crude is $34.50 US per barrel. I mean, these figures are unheard of, and that all translates down the line to you and I paying more money for our fuel cost. That's the ultimate problem. If the OPEC nations restrict the amount that they produce, everybody's competing for that less amount of fuel, and that drives the prices up. We can try to regulate it, but ultimately you just regulate when the price gets paid. You may say this, you only impose or increase your prices so often, but somewhere, somehow down the line, the people who produce this oil still get paid for what they produce. You may get it regulated that you don't get hit with it all in January month, but you can rest assured that that price is going to trickle down to you over a period of months in any event. The problem, of course, is to get away from these squeezes that we're putting on people is we had to have alternative energy sources, which is a problem here. That's why we need things like our Lower Churchill, for example. That's why we need energy projects that Newfoundland Hydro and Newfoundland Power are trying to come up with so that they're not oil driven, they're not oil based. And that's why we had to get into these wind energy, for example. I mean, we haven't delved into these types of projects in Canada much because we never needed it before with the oil that we had. But if you can't add the oil, unless you have it at exorbitant prices, we're now being forced to look for these alternate energy sources.
So it's really not much we can, your hands are basically...
I wish we were in Alberta's situation where we were producing Alberta, oil like they are in Alberta, to the tune where Premier Klein out there is giving back paychecks of $300 a family because they have such wealth. Now, unfortunately for us, we have one well in production called Hibernia. The only reason we got Hibernia in production to even start our oil industry was we had to make deals in order to get it started that the oil went elsewhere. But we had to do that in order to start the industry. Now, fortunately for us, we do have White Rose projects, we do have Terra Nova projects that are looming and are advancing as we speak. So in terms of provincial oil resources, we're going to be in a much better position 2 years, 3 years down the road when these projects come on stream, because we won't be handicapped with the same rules and regulations that we had for Hibernia. Because Hibernia was a starter that had certain restrictions on it, but we won't have the same restrictions on the Terra Novas and the White Roses and the Ben Nevis projects.
Very good. Now, is there anything you would like to add before we go?
I guess in conclusion, I would say that it's been very frustrating on the plant issue. People sometimes think because they don't see you that you aren't actively pursuing it. That's not the case. I mean, the council here, for example, and I would point out as well, you people are fortunate that you have leadership in your councillors here. There's a lot of communities in this province that have lost fish plants, that have lost their livelihoods, and you never hear anything about it because they lack their own internal leadership. Fortunately here, you can't read a newspaper too often. You certainly can't listen to the fisherman's broadcast, or you can't listen to CBC or NTV or some talkback show without having somebody, most notably your mayor, screaming that we need and we are entitled to our just due when it comes to a plant. So we're blessed that we got that leadership, but it's totally frustrating when, as I said earlier, you still come to that brick wall when somebody is not prepared to listen to you and apply common sense to a very common sense problem. So, and I also would say, looking at these other items you discussed, even though there's frustrations on a plant, the people of Burgeo, in my observation, aren't quitters. It's a case of, okay, if we can't do what we want to do, and you're not prepared to let us do what we want to do in terms of the fishery, fine. Once we get that out of the way, we're still going to be here. We're still going to live here. But just don't hinder us by telling us no. And I like that attitude because that's a, we're not going to die attitude, which we need here. And you see the positive moves. What would we be if we didn't have a new school being constructed? I mean, a new school where you're going to have new facilities and new modern technologies in it. I mean, it's positive. It means that we are going to be around. This IT program. Nobody here is sitting on their laurels and letting technology pass them by. I mean, this project is going to be one of the most innovative that we have in the province. So if you had together the innovative people you got with the positive attitudes that you got and the leadership that we got, I mean, that's a win-win scenario to me. It may take a bit longer to get there, but if it's a team approach, be damned we'll get there.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Very welcome. Anytime.
Stay with us for Off the Rack, the community events, and the BBS Playbill, all after this.
Dear Mrs. Coleman, you don't know me, but I know you know my old red house at the end of the lane. Please forgive me for tracking you down, but I had to thank you. I'm not sure what inspired your kindness, but oh, it's a godsend. Since my wretched hip surgery, just getting to the end of the lane and back takes nearly half an hour, and sometimes the pain just isn't worth it. You brought me something much more important than newspapers. You brought me the understanding that it's the small, the simple things that really help people.
If you're doing just a little, you're helping a lot. From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Off the rack. This week as we scanned our tape rack, we came across a tape of the good old days when you had to shoot a target to get your moose license. Let's look back to June 1990.
Good evening and welcome to the community event segment of tonight's broadcast. I'm Jennifer Marks. BBS is now accepting bookings for the upcoming bingo season for September 2000 to August 2001. Each group may make 2 bookings at this time. Call Marie at 886-2935 to book your bingo, but book soon because the best dates are going soon. Registration for the Sparks, Brownies, Girl Guides, and Pathfinders will be held on Monday, September 11th at 6:30 p.m. in the Parish Hall. Fees are $15 per girl. It is very important that a parent or guardian attend the registration with their child. The Sea Cadets will be starting up again on Wednesday, September 13th at 6:30 p.m. in the elementary school gym. If you are interested in joining up, please go at this time. The annual Terry Fox Run will go ahead on Sunday, September 17th, starting at 2 p.m. at the Community Center. Pledge sheets are available at the school and are in several stores around town. There are buttons and a wide variety of t-shirts for sale. If you would like to purchase a button or a t-shirt, please call Ruth Tucker at 886-2786. Plan to get involved in this worthwhile event and do your part to help fight against cancer. If your group or organization has an upcoming event plan, we'll be happy to advertise it for you. Just call the BBS office by Wednesdays of each week to have items included in this portion of our broadcast. That concludes the community event segment of tonight's broadcast. See you next week.
BBS Playbill. Join Pansy and the gang for 2 stories, a craft, and lots of fun on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. on Pansy's Garden. Next Sunday at 6:30 p.m. we will have religious revelations from the Anglican Church. Before we sign off for the evening, we would like to inform our viewers that the Country Music Awards are coming up tomorrow night on CMT Channel 26. Virgil's own Craig Young will be playing with Patty Lovelace's band, so we hope you watch. And I'll be here again next week with This Week in Review. For This Week in Review, I'm Marie Rose. Good night and God bless.